Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full Time, where we take you around the world of soccer, locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. Full Time is presented by the Game Sports Podcast and powered by 91 Network. You're listening to Season 5, Episode 16 of Full Time. I'm your host, Daniel Scarpino, and with me is our co host, Gitano Gallo. Before we begin today's show, Full Time is sponsored by Little Caesars Pizza. With their two locations in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, you can download and access the Pizza Portal app so you can enjoy a delicious hot and ready pizza from Little Caesars today. We remind our listeners that recordings of Full Time occur weekly or bi weekly, and uploads to all of our platforms for public viewing and listening occur weekly or bi weekly as well. Folks, it gives us great pleasure to welcome you back to Full Time. We hope you are all doing well. Gee, it's another opportunity for us this evening to talk about the beautiful game. How are you, my friend?
You know what, Scarps? I'm a little sore, but this is kind of the perfect time of year to sit around and do nothing. So couldn't have happened at a better time. How are you doing tonight?
I can totally agree with you there, and I'm doing very well, sir. Thank you very much. In today's show, we will discuss the January transfer window, Europe's Big Five, and the Champions League. As always, if anyone would like to listen to our previous content, please check us out at Full Time on the Game Sports Podcast and 91 Network. And without further ado, Gaetano, and to everyone who has taken the time to tune in here today, let's kick off. Let's waste no time here, Gitano. We get this show started with going right into the January transfer window. It's our first crack at it, really. How have you enjoyed the transfer market dealings thus far?
Um, Up until the last 3 days, I could have really cared less, or couldn't have cared less, sorry, about what's been going on. But City have been splashing the cash the last couple days, so it's been pretty exciting for me. How about you?
Uh, no comment. No comment. I'm still waiting for things to happen on the Arsenal front, but we are going to get into some of those dealings regarding Manchester City and the lack thereof for Arsenal. So let's get right into it, Gitano. The following transfer market news comes from The Guardian. So be sure to check them out as they provide up to the minute transfer market information in the world of football. First, it's Omar Marmoush, who goes from Frankfurt to Manchester City for 59.1 million. City pays 70 million with 5 million in add-ons for the inform attacker who can play centrally or out wide, and he will wear the number 7 at the Etihad. Gee, it's some huge news to kickstart the transfer window. This one's all you.
Yeah, this is probably since Erling Haaland, like the most exciting transfer. One of the most informed players in Europe, in the Bundesliga in terms of goal involvements, only behind Harry Kane this season. And like you said, can play anywhere across your attacking line, can play up top, plays out wide. It just really going to add something dynamic to City's attack, which has kind of been lacking since Julian Alvarez left. It's also going to be nice for Erling Haaland to be able to get some rest now. Through a big heavy schedule coming up here. I'm just super excited about this. I think he's just going to be a perfect fit at City.
Yeah, and I've been hearing about this move for about the last 2 weeks. Maybe as a City fan, you've been hearing about it a little bit longer. And I've always been sitting on the edge of my seat thinking, once City land this guy, it's going to be, all eyes on deck there for the rest of the Premier League. So I think that he's going to be hitting the ground running. And I think that this is a huge signing for Manchester City. Up next is Kvichka Kvaratskhelia, who goes from Napoli to PSG for 59.1 million. PSG announced the arrival of the 23-year-old winger who confirmed his Napoli exit and will wear the number 7 shirt, which was vacated by none other than Kylian Mbappe. Gee, this deal is signed until 2029. How big of a move is this for PSG?
It's a big move. I don't particularly like it. So they signed Bradley Barcola summer of 23 or 24 for a pretty hefty fee. He's only a year younger than the Georgian winger whose name I cannot pronounce. I'm not even going to bother try butchering it. But he's having a career year right now for PSG. Scored the winner against City last night. So I just think bringing in this, another winger to play on that side when they're so close in age as well, it's a little odd. I think they're both fantastic players, and I think if PSG are going to try and fit them in, they'll probably be able to. But this feels very like old school PSG, where we haven't seen them do this in the last couple of years. They're trying to kind of shift away from this model, so it's just a little odd to see.
When this signing happened, I didn't tell you about it, but it kind of made me reflect back to a couple of conversations that we had personally in the summer saying, when these guys have these great European competitions or a great World Cup, these big clubs all of a sudden chomp at the bit to try and sign them. And I feel like this is kind of what happened here. Like he had a very good Euros, I thought, anyways. And now big clubs are after him, and he took his opportunity. Not to say that he wasn't at a big club in Napoli, obviously he was, but this is a big deal for PSG, I would say, to bring in a prolific player like this, and we'll see what happens in terms of how he fits into that rotation and what that means for PSG moving forward. Abdulkadir Kusanov goes from Lens to Manchester City for 33.8 million. The center back at 20 years of age says that he is, quote, delighted to link up with the best players in the world and one of the greatest coaches ever, end quote, after signing a deal that runs as well until 2029. G, again, this one is all yours, so you can go for it, sir.
Yeah, 20-year-old center back from Uzbekistan. When he makes his Premier League debut, he'll become the first player from Uzbekistan in Premier League history, which is pretty cool. But the scouting report on him is that he's just big and mean and physical. And apparently, this is paraphrasing here, but it was about as fast as Kyle Walker, but sometimes forgets to put the brakes on. So I'm looking forward to seeing, that first, Manchester derby, that first game against Liverpool, that first game against Arsenal, where he's just flying into big tackles. I think this is kind of something City's really been lacking in the back line, is just someone. It's great to have the ball playing center backs and like the nice skillful players, but sometimes it's really nice to just have a guy who's hell bent on keeping the ball out of the net and willing to do whatever to keep the ball out of the net. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, 100%. And you need that sort of dynamism in your team, and you can't always have the same profile of player. So to your point, I think that having a center back like that will do City and any team that this man would have signed for quite good. Another move in the transfer window is Vitor Reyes, who goes from Palmeiras to Manchester City, this time for 29.6 million. The highly rated center back, who can also play at fullback, says that Pep Guardiola and the presence of other Brazilians at City really caused him to make this decision. Gee, it's a 4.5-year deal. Take it away.
Yeah, again, super exciting young center back. Just turned 19 a couple weeks ago. He's basically, again, paraphrasing the scouting reports here, but basically Thiago Silva is kind of the model that he plays in. Big, physical, can win the ball, but also really great with the ball at his feet and can distribute. So I think, obviously, at 19, he's nowhere near kind of that level. But if that's kind of the level that the kind of the skill set he possesses, I think Man City and Pep is probably the best place for him to kind of reach that level. I'm super excited to seeing that going forward.
Yeah, and again, you know how well Pep develops players. So at such a young age, to be put in that sort of bracket, if you like, of Thiago Silva, I mean, wow, that's absolutely incredible. And I think again, with Pep's development, the sky's the limit for this young man for sure. Next, it's Jadon Philogene, who goes from Aston Villa to Ipswich Town for a fee of 20 million. The England U21 winger, who developed at Villa's academy, wants to play as much as possible after signing a 4.5-year deal. G, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, Villa's kind of become a pretty big pond in the last couple of years with high European aspirations, bringing some of the best talent in the world. And kind of the unfortunate, repercussion of that is youth players aren't going to get that chance. I think for 20 million, Ipswich could definitely get their values worth from him. Obviously, his debut coming against City, losing 6-0 is never going to be a good kind of good sign of good things to come. But I think from what we've seen from him at Villa before and on his couple of loans at Hull and Villa, like before previously, because he did make some appearances last year, I think this is a decent move for Ipswich. Nothing crazy, but also not like a terrible move.
Yeah, for Ipswich, I don't think that they really lose anything in this situation. If anything, they only gain trying to stay out of the relegation zone. But what I will say is that, and we talked about this, in private, we talked about this on full time. Best way for players at any level to develop, you have to play. You've got to get minutes in the legs. So if this is how he's going to get minutes in the legs, this is how he's obviously going to get better, and his aspirations obviously will shoot higher the more that he plays. It's Daniel Malen, who goes from Borussia Dortmund to Aston Villa for 20 million. Villa pay an initial fee for the versatile attacking player who played in Arsenal's youth ranks before going to PSV. Gitano, it's 1 out and 1 in for Villa. The floor is yours.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of exactly what I was just talking about. Sending out a youth player, kind of came through your academy for someone who's got European experience, has kind of done it on big stages in top leagues before. I think it's an all right move for Villa. I don't think it automatically catapults them into like guaranteed top four, but I definitely think a little bit of extra firepower in January is never a bad thing to pick up.
Yeah, exactly. And especially for Villa being in the competitions that they are in and how much football they are playing. I think, again, if you can add somebody else to your roster that can, bolster your attack, it's all thumbs up. Arthur Vermeeren goes from Atletico Madrid to RB Leipzig for a fee of 19.4 million. On loan from Atletico Madrid last summer, the 19-year-old has reached the appropriate number of appearances to trigger the clause, making the move permanent. G, your thoughts on this from RB Leipzig's perspective?
Yeah, I like it. They kind of have a reputation of being a place for young talent to develop. We've seen we could sit here and list players for hours that have come out of that. But I mean, most recently, Danny Olmo, Dominic Szoboszlai, like especially in central midfield, they've produced some fantastic players. I think this is just fantastic for them.
Yeah, if you had to pick a few clubs in the world of football where you'd like for a player to go and develop, certainly Leipzig would be one of them. So we'll see how that one plays out, and I'm sure that it will play out in pretty good fashion. Emmanuel Agbadu goes from Reims to Wolves for 16.6 million. Wolves confirm a 4.5-year deal for the center back who played in Tunisia and Belgium before finding Ligue 1 success. G, does this move help Wolves in terms of their relegation survival hopes?
I mean, it definitely doesn't hurt their host bringing in a center back just kind of before his prime, 27 right now. Typically, center backs and any defenders kind of play their best in their late 20s and early 30s. So I don't think this is the worst move in the world for them. I do think they have other issues to kind of worry about as well. Obviously, shoring up the back line is kind of always priority number one when you're in a relegation scrap. But so this is definitely a step in the right direction, but I don't think he's going to be kind of the savior of their entire season. Still think they have some work to do in January.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly when you said it's a step in the right direction because you're in a relegation fight. Odds are you're not going to outscore teams in games, so you do need to shore things up, and you got to be trying to keep clean sheets or maybe one goal against at best per game. So again, this is a step in the right direction. But if you're Wolves, like many other teams, you definitely still have some work to do. Seko Fofana goes from Al Nassr to Rennes for 16.6 million. The former Lens midfielder returns to Ligue 1 on a 4-year deal after struggling in Saudi Arabia. G, Fofana is returning to a place of comfort. How do you think that this deal is going to play out?
I think this is a great deal. We've seen him be kind of, I don't want to say one of the best midfielders in Liga, but he was solid. He was definitely a reliable player. You knew what you were getting from him, night in, night out. I think we've seen a lot of players struggle in Saudi Arabia. There's a lack of quality across the league, which is pretty hard to kind of make up for. So I think for Ren to pick him up, he's a proven product. 29 years old. You know what you're getting from him. I think this is a fantastic deal for them.
Yeah, and sometimes when, again, that place of comfort where you know the league, you've been a part of it, you've experienced it before, you kind of come back, you don't need to grow into anything, you just kind of hit the ground running. So I also think that this is a really good move. And of course, Gitano, we did not cover every single transfer that has occurred so far in this window. Were there any others that have caught your eye?
Yeah, so Randall Colomwani has gone from PSG to Juve on loan. So in the summer of 2023, PSG spent nearly 100 million euros. It was 90 to 95, depending on the source you're looking for, to bring in Randall Colomwani from Eintracht Frankfurt. He had 40 appearances his first season, 9 goals, 6 assists, only 14 appearances with 2 goals, 1 assist so far this year. So to see him go out on loan at 26 years old as well, maybe caught my eye in not the best fashion. I think this is kind of reflects a poor piece of business from PSG, and kind of a really bad kind of time in Randall Colomwani's career. Obviously, like, playing for Juve is not like a bad time, but to not be able to kind of cut it at PSG when they're in the middle of that transition, not great.
Yeah, I hear you there. I'm just going to take it in a bit of a different direction purely because we've been talking about Manchester City so much this segment here of our show. Nothing confirmed yet, but Kyle Walker probably going to be a Milan player within the next week or so. So again, if I'm being perfectly honest, and obviously you could speak to it better than I can, something that I did not expect this season would be Kyle Walker to leave Manchester City, given what he's done captaining the team in the past, I think, season or two.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit surprised at that. I'm not really sure how you feel on it.
Well, basically what's happened is in the last 18 months, his form has just fallen off a cliff, and that's what it's a natural thing that happens when you're a defender in your mid 30s who was mostly relying on pace throughout your career. Um, his pace is gone, and his kind of he hasn't really made up for it in any other aspect. So he's been on the decline. I don't want to blame all of City's struggles this year on him, but he hasn't helped those struggles. He's been compounding that. Um, I don't want to shit talk him too much because he's a Premier League winning captain, probably the best right back in Premier League history, the best right back in City's history, and has been one of the pillars of Pep Guardiola's time at City since he came in into summer of 2017. But I do think it's kind of it does leave a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. Your captain in the middle of your club's biggest kind of struggle of form in the last 30 odd years um, asks to leave in January. I think that's it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. But the other thing is I won't let that the last like 18-ish months kind of fog my memory of Kyle Walker as one of the best players and that's right back in Premier League history and one of the best players in Pep Guardiola's era. So unfortunately, he wants to go. I think it's time for him to move on. If we're being honest, the time for him to move on would have been last summer. But yeah, we're here now. I don't think he would have gotten much playing time if he had stayed at City, and if he had stayed and gotten playing time, we would have probably continued to lose. So I think everyone just kind of wins in this situation.
So if there's ever a perfect sort of excerpt, I think you just said it there, so I'll certainly leave it at that. Well done. A reminder that the January transfer window will close on Monday, February 3rd, and right here on Full Time, we will highlight all of the major moves made in the transfer market. So be sure to tune in to all of our upcoming episodes so you can stay up to speed with all of the dealings in the world of football. This is Daniel Scarpino and Gitano Gallo, and you are listening to Full Time on the Game Sports Podcast. A reminder that Full Time is sponsored by Little Caesars Pizza. You can download and access the Pizza Portal app for any of the 2 locations in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Have a delicious hot and ready pizza from Little Caesars today. Let's get into Europe's Big Five, and we will get things rolling with the English Premier League. Liverpool remain top with 50 points. Arsenal and Nottingham Forest trail Liverpool with 44 points each. Chelsea rounds out the top 4 with 40 points. Gitano, your thoughts right now on the top 4?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I saw Nottingham Forest sitting in third and tied for second, only behind on goal difference. So I definitely didn't see that coming. Yeah, so it's really hard to say the top 4 is kind of looking normal. Because I mean, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, City, all kind of in and around that ballpark is fine. Even Newcastle poking around in there it's a newer thing, but it's kind of to be expected. But Nottingham Forest, I don't know what's in the drinking water over there, but they've been playing phenomenal this year.
Yeah, defensively solid and taking their chances up front. Chris Wood just looking like one of the league's best strikers at this moment in time. But the Premier League this season, Gitano, is just so interesting. You're seeing teams who go on these like little short runs of form where they look great and then they end up dropping a 4-1 result out of nowhere. Like it's incredible. Even a team like Bournemouth doing incredibly well. Aston Villa is kind of up and down. And, you take a look at their goal difference, you wonder why they're in the position that they're in, but they are. And it's, obviously you got Manchester United and Tottenham who are really struggling and these sorts of things.
Shame.
So, shame indeed. The league's just been all over the place. Like, you just don't know what's going to happen week to week. And traditionally, that's how we feel about the Premier League. But I feel this season now more than ever, you just don't know what's going to happen.
Like in the first like 3-4 weeks of the year, like when like 3 or 4 weeks of the season, I should say, when like everyone's just played those couple of games and like, if you lose your first 2 games, you're sitting dead last, but like it's fine. So you have the whole rest of the season. It feels like that. Like when you see like Tottenham and, United and West Ham and Everton all like sitting down near the bottom and like Forest and like Bournemouth kind of, in the European places, you go, oh yeah, this feels like very like early season, like, they had a couple wins early and look good. But it's like near the end of January and it's insane.
That it really is insane. I think, yeah, just kind of like how the first few weeks of the season go, just kind of how it's been all the way through for the most part. And every game week, at least as an Arsenal fan, anyways, you know, last year and the season before, I was really confident going into some games, almost knowing that we were going to get the result. This season, I just don't know what's going to happen game to game, and that's actually a good thing for the league, because again, it creates more parity and other teams that you wouldn't expect, aka Nottingham Forest, to be in the. So it definitely is a good thing for sure. And in the relegation zone, Southampton, Leicester City, and Ipswich Town make up the bottom three. Wolves is only outside of the relegation zone on goal difference. Gitano, Everton have picked up a big win as of recent under their new manager, David Moyes. So the question now is, are we kind of narrowing in on four teams in the relegation fight, give or take, do you think?
I think so. I think David Moyes coming in at Everton is going to be huge for them. Again, it's not that they're going to crack the top half of the table, but I think there's going to be enough of a boost there, and he's a good enough manager for a club that kind of level, that he should be able to see them out of this. So yeah, I think we're kind of looking at four here, unless United or Spurs keep slipping, which I wouldn't complain about.
Yeah, it would definitely make for more great conversations, particularly on our show. But uh, I also think that it's kind of down to four teams now. This is going to be a huge boost for Everton. Leicester City have lost their last 7 games in a row, just a disaster there. Wolves, they're having more problems than a horse has hair, and these sorts of things. So, yeah, it's kind of all over the place. And I'm pretty sure, I don't have the exact number, so I don't want to be quoted on it, but like close to half of the league's managers this season have been sacked. It's been insane.
Uh, it's got to be up there. I'm trying to just think of the ones who haven't been sacked at this point, and then it's like Pep, Slot, Arteta, Maresca, Howe, Ange, Emery.
Yeah.
Who's at
Um,
Bournemouth?
uh, Iola,
Oh
Iola.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And then who's at Brighton?
oh, the young guy, the
Um,
31-year-old.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can't remember his name, but he's young and doing well. And then you've got Forest manager, the Portuguese fella.
Yeah. So we're at 10. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think
about half,
that's. I think we're if it's not half, it's real close.
exactly. So, really interested, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the relegation zone. So time will tell there, but we're definitely going to keep tabs on it. Again, the only one that we talked about from last show that's definitely out of it now is Southampton. But basically, those four teams are in and around, and will be fighting for their lives. Italy Serie A keeps us entertained. It's Napoli back at the top with 50 points. Inter is second with 47 points. Atalanta is third with 43 points. And Lazio is fourth with 39 points. Gee, what can you say right now on the top flight in Italy?
Yeah, I mean, with Napoli losing their star Georgian left winger, whose name I still can't pronounce. I'm looking at it on my screen. I can't do it. Um, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond to that. Whether they dip into the market, whether they kind of stick it out with the squad they have. I think that's going to be when we look back at this season. I think this is going to be kind of a pretty pivotal moment in the Serie A title race, or not if Napoli just kind of keep it rolling. Um, but yeah, I think that's really. I think it's going to be an issue for them if they don't replace him, and it could really bust the Serie A title race wide open.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say to that, to kind of, I don't want to say play devil's advocate, but just we've seen this down the years. Sometimes you see a star exit a team and then the rest of the team really comes
Yeah.
together and molds. I feel like that could happen for Napoli, especially with the brilliant manager that they have. So time will tell that story, but I still have high hopes for Napoli, and I hope that they keep on rolling. In Spain's La Liga, Real Madrid have moved to the top with 46 points. Atletico Madrid dropped down to second with 44 points. Barcelona and Athletic Club have both 39 points. Gee, it's kind of too early to say, obviously, that it's a two-horse race, but it feels like it's moving in that direction, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, Barca kind of stumbled, and the stumbles have continued a little bit here. Only one win in their last five, two losses and two draws as well. Whereas you look at Atletico and Real, it's 4 wins for each, a draw for Real and a loss for Atletico. So yeah, I think it's going to be a two-horse race, but I wouldn't also be shocked if Barcelona, go on a little bit of a run here and get themselves back in it.
Yeah, there still is time, and we know that as much as a team could be in a bad run of form, that could change overnight, and they could be, winning their next 5 of 5. So time will tell there. But kudos to Atletico Madrid for climbing the way that they did as of recent, and Real Madrid, of course, they are always going to be in and around the discussion for the first place and the title. In the Bundesliga, Bayern is first with 45 points. Leverkusen is second with 41 points. Frankfurt is third with 41 points. And Stuttgart is fourth with 32 points. So, speaking of two-horse races, is that what you believe that the Bundesliga is likely becoming?
Yeah, and especially with third place Eintracht Frankfurt just selling their star player Omar Marmoush to City. Um, Again, I don't think it's going to be catastrophic for their season, but I think you lose a player like that, and you definitely kind of you're not going to do as well as you might have with him, obviously. So I don't think they're going to be able to push for the title. I still think they'll end up in a European place and have a fine season, but I think it's just pushing for the title is going to be a little too much for them, and it's going to end up being Bayer Leverkusen and Bayern Munich battling for the title again.
I agree with that, and I'd like to apologize. I said that Frankfurt has 41 points. They actually have 36 points. I misspoke. So again, it's Bayern who's in first with 45, Leverkusen with 41, and Frankfurt with 36, making it thus a two-horse race, which I totally agree with that. It'll probably be those two teams, Bayern and Leverkusen, who battle it out towards the end of the season. In France's League 1, PSG have a 9-point lead at the top over Marseille in second. Gitano, is it possible that anyone can catch PSG at this point in time?
I mean, it's still mathematically possible, but with PSG bolstering the squad in January, um, I don't see it really happening. This isn't going to be the most convincing PSG title win we've ever seen. We've seen them walk it pretty early, but I look around the rest of the league and I don't think there's enough quality anywhere to catch them.
Yeah, then I'm with you on that front as well, my friend. Moving along, it's the Champions League, which is nearing its end of the league phase as the knockout football that we get to experience every year, which is so exciting, is right around the corner. We've got just one game remaining for each team next week. That'll round out all 8 games that each team gets to play. So, what do you think that we can expect in terms of the last 2 days of the initial phase of this competition?
Um, I think there's going to be some chaos. There's a lot of teams that are kind of typically, qualified for the knockout phase at this point that aren't, including my Manchester City. Um, there's really not a lot of teams like confirmed with their spots, whether it's in the top 8 or actually just qualifying in general. So I think there's going to be a lot of kind of screen peeking and checking, refreshing the table in the next 2 match days, just making sure we know kind of what's going on. But I expect it to be a lot of chaos.
Yeah, it's probably going. It won't feel like the last day of a Premier League season, but it'll almost resemble it in some effect. So totally agree with that. And we're going to talk a little bit about what it's going to look like in the final 2 days here and where teams currently sit. So at this moment in time, only 2 teams have secured their spot in the next round as part of the top 8 teams, 100%, who will advance automatically to the round of 16, which means that they won't have to play an additional 2 games, which is huge. And that, of course, is Liverpool and Barcelona. So they've automatically qualified for the round of 16. They won't have to play a qualifier. And the remaining teams who control their fate, who can control their fate to qualify for the top 8, assuming that they win their last game next week, are Arsenal, Inter, Atletico Madrid, Milan, and Atalanta. So, Gitano, again, Liverpool and Barcelona, they've been in really good form this entire competition, but it's those remaining teams who kind of control their own destiny if they win next week. So, what can you say for the scenario regarding Arsenal, Inter, Atletico Madrid, Milan, and Atalanta?
I mean, you feel bad for Atalanta because they have to play Barcelona. Um, but for the rest of the teams, you have to treat this as like a cup final. Like if any chance you can control your own fate in a European competition, like you have to take that opportunity. So yeah, I would not be surprised to see like Arsenal, Inter, Atletico, all of those teams, run their full strength lineups, even though they're already kind of qualified for the next phase. But yeah, having that control over your own fates can seem absolutely massive for them.
Yeah, and again, we talk about fixture congestion and all of these things. You know, it is a big deal to avoid playing those extra 2 games. It really is. And just to point to Arsenal the other day when they played Dinamo Zagreb, people were calling for rotation, putting in a goalkeeper for Arsenal that hasn't played all season, changing up the midfield, putting Miles Lewis Skelly to play in the 8th as opposed to, playing as a left back. Arsenal basically started their strongest team possible, because they have to try and win to get into this top 8 to avoid playing those extra 2 games because it's an injury-ridden squad. So again, I think next week for all those teams that we just mentioned, I think that they're going to be trying to go for it 100%. There will not be any squad rotation, and they're going to really try and win those games so that way they can get into the round of 16. So apart from the 9 teams who have no mathematical scenario to qualify for the next round of the competition, it's basically going to be every other team remaining in the competition who will get into that top 24 and have a chance to compete in a 2-legged affair to qualify for the round of 16. So if things were to end today, which obviously they don't, but if they were, the likes of Manchester City, Dinamo Zagreb, and Shakhtar Donetsk would miss out. They wouldn't qualify for that qualification. So that's it, Gitano. It will not just be them fighting for the right to move on. You've got PSV, Club Bruges, Benfica, PSG, Sporting, and Stuttgart. They all need to do some work in order to advance. So what teams, not that you think will advance, but what teams do you think are really and truly going to miss out?
I mean, the way City have been playing this season and the kind of the middle of the crisis that we were in, I wouldn't be shocked to see City miss out. I would not be happy about City missing out, but I wouldn't be shocked to see it. So basically, the situation for City is we have to go to Club Bruges, and we have to win. The only way that we don't qualify in that scenario is if Zagreb wins by like 14 goals and gets a better goal difference. So hopefully, I'm knocking on wood. Zagreb doesn't win by 14 goals, and City can go to Club Bruges and win. But yeah, I think even PSG could like slip out of here. It's really messy.
It really is, and I would say that. And again, I don't know who's going to go through. I don't know who's going to get knocked out. It would be such a shock if Manchester City didn't get through, just again, with the season that they've had and all of these sorts of things. But PSG as well, I think that would be, it would be embarrassing in short, because again, we know their struggles in Europe down the years. It's been almost comical, but you can't not get through given the way that the competition works now. So I'm really looking to see what PSG and Manchester City can do. That's basically where my eyes are going to be glued, apart from Arsenal. So yeah, it basically is all down to those final 2 match days, Gitano, of the Champions League, and that's next week as the league phase will wrap up. The games will be played on Tuesday and Wednesday, January 28th and 29th. And in our next episode of Full Time next week, we will know and announce the 24 teams who have successfully moved on to the next phase of the competition, along with all of those, of course, who unfortunately missed out. This is Daniel Scarpino and Gitano Gallo, and you're listening to Full Time on the Game Sports Podcast. A reminder that Full Time is sponsored by Little Caesars Pizza. You can download and access the Pizza Portal app for any of the 2 locations in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Have a delicious hot and ready pizza from Little Caesars today. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Full Time. As we bring today's show to a close, we want to sincerely thank each of you for tuning in and being with us to talk about the sport that connects us all. G, my brother, thanks for tonight, man. This has been a great deal of fun.
Thank you as well. It's been a hectic January in the world of soccer and in the real world. So it's always nice to kind of anchor into these moments and connect again. It's just yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do. Thank you for having me again.
Share that sentiment 100%, and thankfully we get to do it all again next week. A reminder to our listeners that the next episode of Full Time will be recorded the week of January 27th, 2025. In that show, we will take a look at the January transfer window, Europe's Big Five, and the Champions League. As always, we will keep everyone in the loop with all of the happenings in the world of football. For weekly content, make sure to hit like, follow, and subscribe to all platforms of both the Game Sports Podcast and 91 Network on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Facebook, Instagram, X, Podbean, and Spaces at suitoday.com. For Gitano Gallo, my name is Daniel Scarpino, and thank you for tuning in to Full Time. We look forward to seeing you at kickoff next time back here on the Game Sports Podcast and 91 Network. Best always.